One of the last surviving veterans of the siege of Tobruk has opened up about his time in the war ahead of the 81st anniversary of the crucial battle. Families of those who died in the siege have also met in Melbourne to commemorate the milestone in one of the first catch-ups since COVID.
In 1940 and 1941, 14,000 young men left Australia for the Middle East to join the Allied forces' battle against the Germans. They fought in what became known as the Siege of Tobruk, an 8-month strategic defence of the Libyan port against the Germans' elite Afrika Korps. The siege marked one of the greatest Allied victories of World War II, the first time the Germans had been pushed back.
The Australian infantry coolly let the tanks pass through them and then mow down the disconcerted German infantry who followed.
81 years later, one of Victoria's 3 surviving Rats of Tobruk has opened up about his wartime experiences. 103-year-old Geoffrey Pullman joined the armed forces shortly before his 21st birthday, replacing one of the men in the 2nd 12th Regiment.
I was a soldier. I signed up and did these things, and I didn't really have any choice anyway, where I was sent or what I did. I mean, you had to accept it. But as long as I had my good friends with me, it was all right, because we could stay in the Middle East and stay in Lebanon, we could stay in Cairo, and we could have a week's leave and go and enjoy ourselves. Unfortunately, we drank too much beer.
The conditions were gruelling, and Jeff said surviving war was as simple as having a last name further down the alphabet, as was the case with his friend Bernie Butler.
His name was Butler, mine was Pullman, B before P. So he got the job before me. And regardless his name was Butler, they told him to go and deliver a message to our commanding officer. And he dashed outside to go, bang, and a bomb landed, and that was the end of Bernie.
The term rats was coined by a German propagandist known as Lord Haw, who taunted the Allied forces via his radio broadcast. But the term became a badge of honour.
Living like rats, and you'll never get out there. All things. We're finished. As far as he was concerned, we'd never get out alive. That's what Lord Haw said. I mean, we did all get out alive.
While Jeff will commemorate the 81st anniversary of the siege from his nursing home, descendants of Rats have met at Tobruk House, a hall in Melbourne's Albert Park set up after the war as a place of refuge for veterans in an event organised by the Victorian Rats of Tobruk Association. 20 rats have died since the start of the pandemic. Sky News' very own Michael Kroger was there to honour his father Jack.
Well, Dad was in Libya in 1941. He was captured just north of Tobruk at Derna on or about the 7th of April. Rommel's forces were moving towards Derna, which he subsequently took before he moved on Tobruk. So Dad was captured and was in a prisoner of war camp for a couple of years. Boy, these were the greatest generation, and it's an enormous privilege for anyone to be in any way associated with them.
Tobruk House has an incredible history. In 2007, the remaining Rats of Tobruk decided to sell the hall because they thought they could no longer afford the upkeep. They then auctioned it and donated much of the proceeds to the Royal Children's Hospital. But local philanthropist Bill Gibbons then stepped in and bought the property and gifted it back to the veterans.
Even for me, I'm a descendant. It was probably one of the saddest days when we knew the hall was going to get sold, and I'm actually going to even get some tears in my eyes now. And even when it did sell, no one knew that Bill was then going to return it back to the Rats.
A hall which houses decades of wartime stories and a man who lives to tell tales of mateship, bravery and sacrifice.
After the war, we kept in touch always as long as we could. And any of our close friends, they've done all sorts of things to help us. No, they were very good. It did bond us. Julia
Bradley, Sky News, Melbourne.